But our first piece of action for you now, we're going over to NHRA drag racing.
If you believe the dictionary, the word funny means causing laughter or amusement. Yet in the dialect of drag racing, funny means a deadly serious four-wheeled ride on the wild side. By strict definition, funny is odd or unusual. But in the vocabulary of high velocity, funny is a frequent flight down the quarter mile in 5 ticks of the clock and over 5 times the double nickel. Webster's would have you believe a funny is an ongoing story told in the comic pages. In NHRA speak, a funny is strictly a one-liner, a point A to point B daredevil in a dash for a barrel full of cash. And once a year, an Elite Eight assembled to crown a king in the All-Star Showdown known as the Big Bud Shootout. Under bright sunny skies, a huge crowd is on hand at Indianapolis Raceway Park to enjoy the 13th annual running of the Budweiser Big Bud Shootout. Hi everybody, I'm Dave McClelland and welcome to the Big Bud Shootout, the race within a race that pays $50,000 to the winner. Assembled behind me, the 8 best funny cars in the country today, based upon qualifying efforts over the last 17 races. And what a season it has been. We have 3 rookies in the field. We have 1 racer that has won only 1 time, and the man that qualified in the #1 spot is the 3-time champion and defending champ of the Big Bud Shootout. John Force, you going to take home the 50 grand today?
Well, like Coyle, Bernie, and I talked about this morning, we're going to give it a shot, but we're excited. It's just great to be back here at Indy and have our race car perform.
Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Right now, let's join Steve Evans with a further look at this year's running of the Big Bud Shootout.
Well, David, that smiling character, John Force, has been in the final round of the Big Bud Shootout the last 7 out of 8 years and has won it 3 times. And the competition is getting a little wary of John using this event as his own personal annuity to college educate his children. In fact, this morning I talked to some of them, and I think you'll hear the frustration in their voices.
Well, we got a plan now. If it doesn't work here, it'll work in the next race because I'm getting in touch with David Copperfield, and I'm going to see if he can make Force disappear.
I think we're creeping up on the thing pretty good over here. John's doing a good job, and if we got to burn a car up to beat him like he burned his car up last night, we'll burn one up to beat him.
We're not sitting back and wanting to run teens and 20s out there. We're going after it. We're going after O's and do what it takes because really we can beat some of the guys that are 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in points, but to beat Force, need to step up.
Now that incident that Chuck Etchels made mention of, here it was yesterday afternoon. Force at a time trial, a sizzling 5:04, and he tried to burn that Chevy to the levee. John's crew worked until 2 o'clock this morning to replace every line and every piece of plumbing on that car, and let's hope they did it right, because in the first round he draws Kenji Okazaki, and his crew chief, Big Jim Dunn, has been planning an ambush for weeks.
Force usually buries you with money. That's one of his advantages. Well, here I got $2 million budget for 1 run. We got all new heads, new blower, new block. This thing is as good as if I had $2 million to spend.
So if after all of this, John Force feels they're out to get him, it's not paranoia, it's the truth. Dave?
Steve, we'll be to round 1 in just a moment. Right now, let's take a look how you earn the points to get here. Based upon your qualifying position for an entire season, you amass the points that brings the 8 best to this race. And here are the pairings for round #1. It is the top qualifier, John Force, challenging Kenji Okazaki. Now, Force has had his problems in warm-up runs for this Big Bud Shootout, but don't count on him to be making many mistakes. Kenji Okazaki, as we heard his car owner and crew chief Jim Dunn say, has got a $2 million budget for this 1 pass. He may need every penny of it. Al Hoffman, 1992 champion here at the Big Bud Shootout, qualified 2nd. His opponent is Tom Hoover, the #7 qualifier. For Hoffman, he has got some consistency out of the Western Auto Slick 50 Dodge. And for Tom Hoover, he's got the opportunity to prove a point. He has never made it past the first round of the Big Bud Shootout in his previous appearances. Chuck Etchells qualified in the 3rd spot after a season-long competition. His opponent is the number 6 qualifier, Dean Scuzza. Etchells hopes that he'll be able to pull another of those 4 second elapsed times out of his hat. He ran that mark at Topeka a year ago. For Dean Scuzza, what a thrill. He acknowledges the glory of being part of this 8-car field, but look out, he wants to win it as well. Our final pair finds Cruz Pedregon qualified 4th against Jim Epler, number 5. And I want you to remember that the qualifying positions are based on points earned throughout the season. Thus, these 2 cars may be further apart in performances than their number 4 and 5 positions indicate. Epler's hoping for yet another of those 300-mile-an-hour charges. 1 year ago, Pedregon lost to John Force as Force took his 3rd Big Bud Shootout victory. Lance Larson, the crew chief for Epler, looking on as Bob Grant coming on board at this event for Cruz Pedregon, serving as the crew chief there. Now, don't forget that Grant has got a lot of experience in winning with a funny car. He was with Don Prudhomme in the glory days of his funny car competition when he won 4 consecutive Winston titles. Now, Grant working his wizardry for Larry Minor and Cruz Pedregon. Starter Buster Couch waiting for both drivers to get set. They're ready. Great drag race by half a car length, and listen to the times, 5:13 to a 5:16. Cruz Pedregon prevails. His speed was 286 miles an hour. Epler was knocking on that 300-mile-an-hour doorstep as he ran 297 trying to catch the flying Pedregon, but could not do it. Our instant replay shows you the advantage off the starting line, very slight, just 0.005 of a second went to Pedregon. Then as they passed the halfway mark, Pedregon extended the lead, winning it by just about a car length. Steve?
You're 1 round closer to needing a tax account.
Yeah, that's right. You know, 13's good, but we're going to have to step it up a little bit for whoever, Forrest or Kenji, but we're ready. We're excited.
I can tell.
Cruz Pedregon pumping himself up for the semifinal round. There's only 3 rounds of racing in an 8-car field. Here is the rookie that everybody is wondering about, Dean Scuzza. He has had an outstanding run of qualifying throughout the season. He is driving the family car with Glenn Micris as the crew chief. This is a family racing operation. There's no big buck sponsorship. As much as they may desire one, they have not acquired the backing yet. Backing like his opponent has from Kendall GT1, Super Winch, and Mopar. This is the Dodge Avenger, driven by Chuck Etchells. Etchells was the quicker car throughout the season. He qualified ahead in the number 3 spot of the number 6 qualifier, Scuzza. Etchells is using the new Dodge Avenger body. Put it on, in fact, at mid-season at Denver and the Mile High Nationals. For Scuzza, he's got a brand new body on his race car, the Pontiac Formula Firebird, that he was utilizing 2 weeks ago at Brainerd, Minnesota. Had the misfortune of scraping along the guardrail, so they replaced the body on the race car to bring it here to Indianapolis and this Big Bud Shootout. A total of $154,000 posted in qualifying bonus monies and the cash that will be paid out at the end of this day. And crew chief John Medlin hopes that he's got a tune-up in the low 5 teens. It looks like that's what it's going to take to win. On board with Etchells. Tremendous race. And just by a matter of inches, Chuck Etchells squeezes past Dean Scuzza. And it is Etchells winning this race for his crew chief Medlin because Scuzza actually had the quicker elapsed time. Off the starting line, the clocks do not begin until the car leaves the infrared beam across the starting line. That's how the slower car can actually win the race, and that's what happened here. Etchells ran 5:18, Scuzza ran 5:16. Our shutter cam shows us the margin of victory, 0.009 of a second.
Chuck, even though you won it on a hole shot, you still saw a lot of that kid from Ohio.
Hole shot? I usually lose him on hole shots, Steve. What the heck's going on here? Yeah, I saw Dean. He made a pretty hard move on us around the middle. I don't know if we spun a tire or what happened there, but we got around 1,000 foot.
Back in the staging lanes, Jim Dunn, the teacher, giving Kenji Okazaki, the student, a few tips on how to beat John Force. The Japanese national from Tokyo, Japan, has developed into one of the best levers in the sport. By that we mean he is uncanny in his reaction to the flash of yellow. He drives the Moon Eyes Dodge tuned by its car owner, Jim Dunn. Now for John Force, he may have had the top qualifying time at the bulk of the events throughout the season. That put him in the #1 spot in this 8-car field. But he's got to be a bit concerned. For in the tune-up runs, as we saw earlier in this show, he had an engine problem. That has been very rare for Force this weekend. That is Jim Dunn, a great driver in his own right. Now wrenching on his own car, trying to get Kenji Okazaki competitive with the car tuned by that man, Austin Coyle. John Force at the wheel, certainly the winningest driver throughout this season. As we told you at the head of the show, John's practically counting on the money from the Big Bud Shootout annually. 7 years of the 12 contested thus far, he has been in the finals, winning 3. And he will not win this one. Kenji Okazaki steps up to the plate with a brilliant 5.12 at 296 miles an hour. Well, all the planning by Jim Dunn and his driver Okazaki certainly paid off. Both did their job to perfection. Dunn with a tune-up. Kenji had the lead. He was ahead of John Force. John beat himself. The engine problem set in. That led to a small fire. He was unhurt. Steve?
Big Jim, the plan worked.
He works hard, this weekend, tune this car up for this event, Big Bud Shootout. And we missed by a few points last year, that we're here this year, and we're still number 8, but, we beat the #1 John Force. That's, something.
You bet that's something.
Kenji Okazaki with a smile on his face. You know he's got to be thrilled to put the #1 guy and defending champ out of the Big Bud Shootout. Our next pair, the final pair of round #1, it is Al Hoffman against Tom Hoover. And I want to keep reminding you that the qualifying positions are based on a season-long performance. May not relate to what they're doing on this day. Tom Hoover, the #7 qualifier, knows that he's going to have to step up a bit because the performance of Al Hoffman throughout the season has been superior. Hoffman qualifying in the #2 spot. Tommy Anderson, the crew chief, along with his wife Helen and the rest of the crew, making the final adjustments under the body of the Western Auto Slick 50 Dodge. Helen directing Al into the highest traction spot on the starting line, trying to corral the some 5,000 horsepower that reside under the Dodge body. For Tom Hoover, he and his crew approached this race much as Jim Dunn and Kenji Okazaki did. Hop it up. A lot of clutch dust on the Western Auto Dodge, and Al Hoffman takes advantage of the motor problems of Tom Hoover. He wins it with a most competitive 5.19 at 292. So Kenji has got the lane choice over the cruiser by his 5.12 quick time of round #1. The other side of the ladder pits Al Hoffman against Chuck Etchells, with Chuck picking the lane in the final 4. Steve?
Nice shot, Al. 5.19.
Well, that's what we're looking for, somewhere in the teens if we can run out there. But we lost lane choice to Etchells, but I don't think it makes much difference. The lanes are pretty even out there, so it's going to be a good, close race.
You won't need David Copperfield. Kenji made Force go poof.
Yeah, I seen Force disappear on his own, so we're all right. If we can make it past this round, we'll be looking good.
You bet. John Force's crew wasting no time performing an autopsy, trying to find out what went horribly wrong with that motor against Kenji Okazaki. But, John, it has to relate to yesterday's problem as well.
Well, it really does. It was a thrash last night, 2 in the morning. But, Steve, it's really a shame. A lot of money out here for Budweiser. This car running O's, nobody's close. And bang, all of a sudden we're snake bit. Coil burning's the best. They'll figure it out.
No matter how much you win, losing's still not fun.
No, it's not. But, hey, we've had our share of the wins. And, fate just passes it around, and we're getting our share now.
Thanks, Jeff. David?
Steve, the racers have said throughout this season the only person that's going to beat Force is Force himself, and that's exactly what happened. And that big money that he's talking about from Budweiser, don't forget, there's a payday for $50,000 for one of these 4 drivers. Here is Kenji Okazaki wheeling the Moon Eyes Dodge. His opponent is Cruz Pedregon. Now, don't forget, the McDonald's Oldsmobile is the slower of these 2 cars. because the run by Kenji in the first round at a 5:12 puts him in the favorites role, not the least of which is he took out the top qualifier in the process. A rookie in the Big Bud Shootout. Kenji at the wheel of the Moon Eyes car. Cruz Pedregon is already deep stage, and he red lights. Oh, Pedregon just got in too deep. He went through the pre-stage beams, rolled into the staging light. Kenji doesn't realize that the red light is on for Pedregon. He keeps getting back into the throttle and wins it. Where did the 5:12 go? It slows to a 9:20. But Kenji in his rookie year is in the championship round of the Big Bud Shootout. Starting the engine for Al Hoffman. That race in a moment. Right now, down to Steve.
Well, Kenji, I don't know how you say big break in Japanese, but you won that race.
I thought so. But did he smoke? I mean, a red light or something? Oh, he did, huh? He kind of weird staging, I noticed that. But, I smoked the tire also. Yeah, I didn't know that time, he did right. So I just kept the pedaling back to that finish line, which is,
One more round.
I guess so, yeah. We're going to do it.
Kenji Okazaki pleased indeed. You talk about a high traction spot. X marks it here for the car driven by Al Hoffman. The Western Auto Slick 50 Dodge does not have the lane choice. Chuck Etchels, his opponent, got the opportunity to pick the lane based upon his quicker elapsed time in round number 1. Smooth procedures worked out by driver and crew chief. It is necessary, hard to believe, in a race that only lasts a quarter of a mile, that the smoother driver will win the higher percentage of the races. Etchels in the Kendall GT1 Dodge Avenger. The super sleek new body from the Chrysler Corporation. Doesn't do much here, as it is Al Hoffman going to the finals. His elapsed time, 5:21. Etchels' elapsed time, 5:21. The advantage off the starting line was only 100th of a second, and it went to Al Hoffman. Our replay shows us one great side-by-side drag race. The speeds for these two cars, Hoffman 291, Chuck Etchels at 287 miles an hour. Our stop action camera at the finish line will show you how close this race was. The margin of victory was only 10,000ths of a second. That's what it looks like in distance. The finals, the rookie, Kenji Okazaki against Al Hoffman, and Hoffman obviously holding the choice of lanes.
Hell, that was a pick'em drag race.
Well, it wasn't what we were looking for, but it was a winning light. That's what we were looking for. So I guess that's we're going to keep on going here. It's us in Japan in the final, as Forrest says.
Both of you ran 5:21. What a seesaw battle.
Yeah, it was a good race. Fortunately, I've been doing well on the tree, and I left on him by a little bit. Obviously, just enough.
See you in the final.
Thank you.
Let's go to Steve Evans and find out what happened to Cruz.
Cruiser, that deep stage on the starting line didn't help your cause.
No, it didn't. I wasn't right up there when I pulled into the beams. I overstaged on the first light, and it rolled in and lit the second light. I wasn't even planning on it. And then it just broke my concentration from there. I wasn't the same.
The only thing worse than red lighting is red lighting and seeing your opponent go up in smoke.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it seems like when that happens, it's a chain of events happen there. Obviously, it's the worst of the worst, unfortunately.
Thanks.
And this sport looks so simple on the outside, just part of the complexities confronted by the drivers every time they come to the starting line. Jim Dunn motivated to pick up the 50 grand. That would go a long ways with his budget. Al Hoffman, with the support of Western Auto and Slick 50, could use it as well. Tommy Anderson, the crew chief for Al, regarded as one of the best in the business, may be up against one of the toughest challenges of the weekend, because Jim Dunn, you never know how he is going to tune that car for Okazaki, and you can bet there's no question asked here. It's going to be everything in it, trying his best to win for the rookie driver. Moon Eyes, the sponsor on the Okazaki-driven car. Kenji flies back and forth from Tokyo to come to the NHRA Winston and Big Bud Shootout events. Must have a lot of frequent flyer miles. And he may have wished for a jet plane here because that's what he would have needed to catch Al Hoffman. 5:18 at 291 miles an hour, and let the celebration begin. There is a $50,000 check waiting for that driver, Al Hoffman, and his crew as a result of winning the Big Bud Shootout. Here's how he did it. On great performance, Okazaki once again had a slight advantage at the starting line, but he could not hold on to it. Al Hoffman ran a 5:18 at 291 and just drove away from Kenji. $50,000 to Hoffman.
That new blower woke this thing up to a 5:18.
Yeah, we didn't want to beat ourselves and go out there and try to run an O. So Tommy's pretty smart at stuff like that, and they went down through there and we turned on a win light, and that's what counts.
Okay, payday. Karen Holzschlag and all of her friends from Anheuser-Busch. Happy St. Louis.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Don't have the Clydesdales for you, but you deserve it as well. Good job.
And the celebration begins as Al Hoffman realizes that he's just won $50,000. For Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClellan saying so long from Indianapolis.
Well, it's Christmas, Mark, so there's some crackers.